Hello, everyone. Hello, fellow astrology enthusiasts. I am Hannah, evolutionary astrologer. Deep, deep gratitude to all of you for tuning in today. And I want to talk to you about a major astrological transit, which is Uranus moving into the sign of Gemini. So I'm going to cover a lot. Hopefully, this is going to be a masterclass in Uranus and Gemini, which will last for 7 years. And we're going to start out by looking to the past. We're going to look at what are some of the events, what are some of the major events that happened during Uranus and Gemini. And also when we bring it back to the present moment, what are the potentials? What are the opportunities here for us? And also, what are the risks? What are the things that we need to be extra mindful of? We're also going to look at some important dates in the cycle for us to pay attention to, and hopefully good tools, good ideas in how to align with these energies, how to take care of our bodies, our nervous systems, and our brain. Very, very important, but we'll get there. So lots to cover. Let's dive in. No time to waste. And I wanted to start out by sharing my information in case you're not familiar with my work yet, or maybe you just want to say hello or want to explore more of my work. So here's how you can find me. Um, and Uranus and Gemini. So probably, many of you already know that 2025 has been busy. We are experiencing really a rare and powerful sequence of these faraway planets, the outer planets. They move very, very slowly, some of them very slowly, some of them a little bit faster, but they're far from us. So every time they shift into a new sign, it's really significant. So in the beginning of the year, we had the nodal axis changing sign to Pisces Virgo, and then Neptune moved into Aries, followed by Saturn also moving into Aries. Jupiter then entered Cancer, and now in this whole time, Uranus has been behind the curtain, preparing to make its big debut into Gemini. So this is going to happen. The shift will begin exactly on July 7th, 2025, and it's going to last all the way through May 2033. So this is a 7+ year transit, and it's really a long-term way of collective transformation. So the longer a planet stays in a sign, the more of a game changing it really is because it has a lot of time to move, to transform things, to shift things. So, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about how this is going to affect you personally, but also how it's going to shape our society, humanity, and really our collective path forward. Because, especially as an evolutionary astrologer, my focus is always on this deeper question, which is how will this transit support the evolution of humanity and ultimately the evolution and the growth of our collective soul, the soul of humanity, right? So let's dive in. So again, I wanted to take this a little bit to the past before we move into 2025 and the years ahead, because the reason is that to better understand where we're going, it's so powerful to look at where we've been. So just so you have an idea, the last time Uranus was in Gemini was in 1941 to 1949. So it's been around 75 years since humanity has experienced this energy. And Uranus is the planet of revolution. It accelerates things. It's about breakthroughs. It's about upgrades, solutions. So it's the planet that really helps us to usher in a new future, and sometimes in radical and unexpected ways, but it's a very futuristic energy. And when it enters Gemini, which is an air sign, and Gemini has everything to do with our minds, it has everything to do with the way we communicate, our transportation, it has to do with travel, it has to do with language, it has to do with technology. So you see how these two coming together, Uranus and Gemini, it's a big deal. And these are the territories that are going to move really, really fast. So it's going to affect how we speak, how we write, how we communicate, how we use social media, technology, which we're already seeing so much already, but it's just the beginning of so, so much more. And it's a lot also about how we think, our mental frameworks, and our education and our educational system as well. So again, the majority of us here haven't seen Uranus and Gemini in our lifetimes. And those who have seen Uranus and Gemini, who were alive last time this transit was happening, chances are you're too young to remember it. And of course, the world has changed dramatically. So these next 7 years are going to be really powerful. So starting to look back a little bit more. So, let's start with the 1400s. This is when we had the invention of the printing press. This revolutionized communication forever. So imagine that for the first time, something, a piece of paper could be mass produced and shared really, really quickly. So this is when you have so many books and newspapers and all these printed materials spreading ideas way beyond word of mouth. So we're talking about literacy rates, we're talking about knowledge and education, like this explosion that started to happen. And you see how it's this breakthrough technological, piece, which is very Uranus, that transforms the way people think, the way people learn, the way people connect, which is Gemini. Next, fast forward to the 1600s. This was when the telescope was invented. Imagine how revolutionary that was. Because when we talk about space and astrology and astronomy, this is all Uranus territory. And Gemini makes us travel, right? It makes us travel through roads, through ideas, through words, and now we're traveling through the telescope. We're traveling not just physically, but mentally and spiritually. We're going to the stars. We're looking at the stars. So just imagine the massive shift in perspective that we're not just thinking about just the earth anymore, but our consciousness expanded beyond what we could see. So we had uh, many important people here, like Kepler and Galileo, like sharing their discoveries, writing about this deeper understanding of the cosmos. So we're really talking about a revolution in thought, and that is the magic of Uranus and Gemini, which we're about to experience again. So new tools, new vision, and revolutionary thinking. Um, we also had the first newspapers emerging in Germany, I believe. Now, fast forward, now jump to 1690 to 1698. This is when we had the very first postal system in the American colonies. So again, people are now able to connect across distance. Like nowadays, we have phones, we have iPhones, we have smartphones, and we may take it for granted, but can you imagine how how much of a breakthrough it was to send a letter across the ocean and to receive a letter from the other side of the world? So again, Uranus and Gemini brings speed and innovation and networking. And now, of course, we're going to start, we're already seeing the virtual reality and AI. But again, it is about how humans communicate with each other, how we exchange information. Now we look to the 1700s. This is when we have the American Revolutionary War. Of course, this was a period of massive upheaval in the American colonies that wanted independence from the British rule. So now we see that revolutionary spirit associated with Uranus and the birth of a new nation. Really, there's a new world order happening here. And we start to see something really interesting here, which is the interplay of the twins. Gemini represents the twins, right? So we have Pollux and Castor, the cosmic brothers. And here you see this brother relationship of England and the United States becoming kind of strange siblings, right? And this revolution not only represented the birth of a country, but also a huge cultural transformation that had everything to do with Uranus themes, so freedom, civil rights, and that power of the written principle. So the Declaration of Independence was signed here, and actually I want to show you the chart. This is when the Declaration of Independence was signed. And that's such a Gemini statement, that Uranus is the liberation. And the written word, that's a very Gemini, and the social rights as well. So it's this really, really important moment, and also the threshold moment between the Age of Enlightenment and the coming Industrial Revolution that also brought massive change. For those who don't know, if you don't know what the Age of Enlightenment was or the Industrial Revolution, just imagine that it was this cultural and intellectual movement across Europe that was based on Uranian themes, reason, science. And it was about being skeptical, defying the traditional authority. So we had these in the monarchy and the church. So it was going out of the norm. And this is a time where you had these key writers and philosophers and great minds like Voltaire, Rousseau, Locke, really great thinkers. And then the Industrial Revolution, which, this is the period right before the Industrial Revolution, was also a period of again, major economic and technological change that shifted. People went from, we went from being rural, agrarian societies and economies to industrial ones. So we have, the really big cities exploding, and it was just factories and industry, all of again Uranian themes, the factories, the industry, the technology coming in, the mass manufacturing that really transformed everything, daily life, work, urbanization, et cetera, and so forth. And really the birth of modern capitalism. And then the next time Uranus is in Gemini, we have the Civil War, another big event here. So this is actually the first Uranus return. You saw the previous chart. This is when the US is born, Uranus is in Gemini, and then the following time that Uranus is in Gemini, we have another war. We have the Civil War. Um, this is again brother against brother. It's so interesting to see this playing out where you have the north of the United States and the south, the twins, the brothers. So now it's brother against brother. They're fighting each other, which of course was very painful, and it was the worst of Gemini. We can say here this shadow of the divided minds. And of course, this war brought huge collapse, thankfully, the collapse of slavery, that really forced the country to redefine, human rights and freedom. So again, the same keywords here are repeating. Uranus and Gemini, liberation, freedom, human rights, upgrading human civilization, and really completely changing American society. This is also when we have the first transatlantic communication cables, which connected the US and Europe for the first time. So there was the transcontinental telegraph. Again, networking, communications, global interconnectedness. And in 1863, I believe, this is so cool. This is when we had the first subway system in London. Um, Imagine that moment where people could just, take the subway to places, get to places much, much faster. And authors like Victor Hugo and Dumas and Dickens, and there's so many novels being created. Gemini is the writer, it's writing and novels and books. So you have these great novels that were all about um, challenging the social norms and really help to expand the collective consciousness. So it was this revolution of words, this revolution of thoughts. And this is also a time where newspapers were spreading faster than ever. And then the following time, which was exactly the last time Uranus was in Gemini, we have the Second World War and the post-war and the Cold War. Um, so it's the time where we have, in many ways, the revolution took the form of machines and codes and new types of warfare. If you've seen the movie, The Imitation Game, you might remember the true story of Alan Turing and his team. Alan Turing and his team, they were able to break Nazi ciphers, and it was really the invention of the modern computer. It was like the birth of the modern computer. So you see that in the midst of death and destruction and war, it was also a time that really pushed us to elevate our technology and our minds and the way we think. So this is huge for us today. This is when the first digital general purpose computer was developed. And this was like the foundation of the information age um, were happening at the time. And then after the Second World War, we have the Cold War, right? So again, United States and England, they were once divided. Now they're back. They're brothers again, right? They're allies during the Second World War. Now they face a new brother, the Soviet Union. Why brothers? Why twins? Because in the Second World War, they were allies. They're brother. They're fighting against. I'm sorry. They're fighting. Um, um, Side by side, and now they're adversaries. Now they're not brothers anymore. So again, you see this divided mind here, collective mind of democracy versus communism, capitalism versus collectivism and communism. So again, this duality of Gemini coming to the forefront. But it's interesting to see that the conflict was not just military, it was also intellectual, right? It was very media driven as well. Um, and one last thing about this is that the generation, the children of Uranus and Gemini, born in the 40s when Uranus was in Gemini, these are the people, this is the generation, they're coming of age in the 60s and they become the counterculture. They become the students, they become the ones protesting and the visionaries that were all about Uranus and Gemini, free speech, right? They're opposing the Vietnam War, they're demanding civil rights. So they're really embodying that Gemini, the Uranus and Gemini revolutionary ideas and the thinking, the wanting to change things and questioning authority and celebrating diversity. And this is also a time where we see the second wave of feminism, which Uranus is all about equality and environmentalism. So it's this impulse for this intellectual freedom in society, which is very much you see the Uranus in Gemini spirit here through rebellion and progress and the free speech and wanting more equality in our society. So they are the kids. They're the kids now adults. Um, Another really important thing that I want to mention is that as Uranus is moving through Gemini these next 7 years, we must pay a special attention to Pluto because Pluto and Uranus, they're brothers here. Pluto is going to be in Aquarius for around 19 years. Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius. So you see how there's a resonance between these two planets, which means that wherever Uranus is passing through, the sign that is in is going to give us a lot more information about the Pluto and Aquarius cycle, right? And just think that Aquarius and Gemini, they're both air signs. So they bring together a mental renaissance. And these outer planets, remember, they're far away from us. They take a long time in a sign. They bring that deep transformation, that deep awakening, and really profound changes in our society. And Uranus and Pluto, Aquarius and Gemini, they represent the mind, our mental faculties, the human mind, the collective mind, our mental frameworks, and how we use our minds to create, to invent solutions, to move forward, to bring more progress. Um, so we really are in the cusp of an extraordinary period in our collective evolution. And remember that for years, these two planets are going to be trining each other. This Pluto in Aquarius, Uranus in Gemini, they're going to be speaking, they're going to be dancing. It's like an air dance here, the dance of air, that are going to really be working through mind, communication, collective intellect, our mental frameworks, a renaissance of ideas, new inventions, new ways of thinking, and the world, technology, of course, technology, how can I forget? So these deep, deep shifts that are really, we're starting out this cycle of Uranus and Gemini with this trine that lasts a long time, really showing us that there's something from the get-go, there's something really important and really significant here. The other planet that we cannot forget to pay attention to is Mercury, because, and I think it's so fascinating how both Uranus and Mercury, they're very fast, right? Speed, air, travel, quick, go. And Uranus has been in Taurus since 2018. Taurus has a much slower rhythm, right? So even though, Uranus is in Gemini for 7 years, and that's a long time, the ruler of Gemini, which is Mercury, travels very quick. So you see how things are just speeding up. And so it's really, really important to pay attention to Mercury. Bring Mercury. Every time we talk about Uranus and Gemini, we need to look at where is Mercury in the sky, because it's such a key player on the unfolding of the Uranus in Gemini story and themes and events. Um, and remember that Mercury is the messenger between the realms, right? So the whole story, the whole mythology of Mercury is that it was traveling through the human world, the world of the gods, and the underworld. So it moves quickly and it has that capacity to move between the realms. It's constantly collecting information, distributing information. So you see the tempo of life really increasing here. Everything, travel, connection, conversations, technology. And as Uranus was in Taurus for 7 years, like I was just saying, Taurus is a much slower sign. It resists change. It has a slower rhythm. Now, as Uranus moves into Gemini, it's almost this like um, it was almost like Uranus and Taurus, Uranus had to push through that really dense soil, right? And it was all about the food system. It was all about the food we're eating. It was about money. And we saw the birth of crypto and digital currency. But now, as Uranus moves into Gemini, into an air element, it's almost like it has more room to expand, to move and accelerate. So again, we need to pay attention to this, a massive acceleration in mental activity. So don't forget to track Mercury, including the um, retrograde cycles. So this period of Uranus and Gemini, what are the evolutionary intentions? If we look at the soul of humanity, how is it helping us to evolve, to grow? So it's so much about awakening our minds. One, I think, big evolutionary intention here is about awakening the mind of humanity through breakthroughs, through innovation, liberation. Remember that Gemini is about the mind, how we learn, how we speak, our languages, our mobility, travel. And with Uranus, it's a potential here really electrifying our airwaves, literally in but also figure of speech. But it's a revolution of thought and hopefully an evolutionary leap in how we think, how we learn, how we perceive reality. So hopefully a mental liberation for all of us and how we think, how we process, how we exchange. So we can see things like new methods of learning. And what is so interesting is that the moment we change our minds about something, the moment we think differently, we then do things differently. And I think that is the potential here. Um, and and there's something also about Uranus brings collectivity. And I think the cycle carries a big potential for humanity to function like a vast neural network, which each individual serving as an important and essential cell contributing to this greater intelligence. Because Gemini celebrates diversity, diversity of thought, of voices, of cultures, of skin tones, of perspectives, of religions. So Uranus and Gemini can really amplify that and reminds us that when, our different backgrounds, our different lived experiences, when it comes together, it really forms a really powerful cognitive ecosystem. There is genius in the group. That's the profound understanding here for all of us. And as we're moved to that, there can't be acceleration in collapsing the old outdated communities and systems and political systems collapsing and new alliances coming, new friendships, new partnerships. So in our own lives, we can expect new friends, we can expect new groups, new communities, and hopefully a more interconnected world. The other thing about Uranus and Gemini, it's this energy that it wants to make sense of the mystery. It wants to demystify the unknown. So hopefully it will see science and mysticism and science coming together. And hopefully also bringing, things like astrology, like energy medicine, like consciousness research, all of these more philosophical and spiritual phenomena gaining way, through the research of Uranus, through the knowledge, becoming more measurable, and the metaphysical becoming more logical. So this, we can see revelations, we can see cracking open these enigmas and bringing spiritual insight with scientific knowledge. So, it can really help us access these maybe even ancient knowledge systems like astrology, for example, but now having it more research, more studied, more validated, more even maybe even integrated into the mainstream field. So hopefully Uranus and Gemini bringing that, making that bridge between spirit and science and helping, that's part of the revolution of our mind, awakening our minds. It's awakening the potential to these new levels of understanding. The other really, really important one is education. Uranus and Gemini is about breaking the mold of education. So traditional systems will have to evolve. Learning will likely become radically different. Of course, technology is a huge part of this. Innovation, virtual reality becoming more and more part of the classroom experience. Will we see blending immersive environments with academic content? Will we see new platforms, new gadgets, maybe new ways of connecting? Will we have teachers that are not even human? They're just going to be AI or holographic. Like, what's going to happen? The sky, if I say the sky is the limit, that's actually too limiting for Uranus and Gemini, but our educational system, our curriculums will introduce more technology-based tools. We might even see um, unconventional fields of knowledge like astrology, like energy work, as they gain more credibility, maybe they will become more and more part of the mainstream educational spaces. And more interactive, with this education becoming more interactive, even more globalized. But we also need to be careful with this as we have less face-to-face interaction. This could lead to a greater sense of isolation, especially among younger generations. And we have to be careful. And I will talk about this more in depth in just a few minutes. But this constant influx of information and digital engagement, which we're already very much in the midst of, may create high levels of mental overstimulation and nervous system dysregulation. So we need to be careful. There's enormous potential here, but we need to be navigating this with care, intention, and conscious, and preserving the heart of humanity, right? Awakening our minds and also strengthening that connection with our hearts. We might also see smarter cities, faster movement. Just imagine, for example, your Uber showing up, but it's flying overhead. Imagine your Amazon package that comes, a drone drops it off. We can see new subway systems. Remember that the very first subway system was launched during Uranus and Gemini. What are we gonna see now? I was reading about the Hyperloop, which is this like it's this vacuum tube here. You can look at the picture. It's this like vacuum tube that moves so fast. So imagine that we get to places faster, and it's all possible. It's all possible. A transatlantic tunnel connecting New York and London in just an hour. Could it be possible? Yes, with Gemini ruling transportation and Uranus driving breakthroughs and innovations, the answer here is absolutely. And as our transportation changes, our cities will need to evolve quickly to keep up the pace. So we're going to also see developments in the urban infrastructure, autonomous vehicles, flying taxis, drone deliveries, and hopefully also intelligent roadways. So it sounds like science fiction, but it's knocking on our doors. And like I said, things are going to get faster and faster and faster because Uranus accelerates things. It accelerates wherever it's transiting, whatever sign it's transiting, it brings fast movement. And then the other thing too is the space age. The space age that we are very much already in. Um, I have to show you guys this meme, but if Uranus rules space and Gemini rules travel, remember how we traveled to space when we had the invention of the telescope during a Uranus and Gemini cycle. And also, through the telescope, that's how we actually saw Uranus for the first time. So Uranus was discovered during a Uranus in Gemini cycle in 1871. So where are we going next? What else is out there? And actually, who else is out there? This is why I picked this meme, because Gemini is our neighbors, are brothers. So could Uranus and Gemini awaken us to our cosmic galactic neighbors, to our brothers and sisters from other planets, from other star systems? So there's so much here that we can discover. Habitable planets, alien life, will open contact, become normalized. Just imagine if instead of cross cultural where we walk down the street and we're seeing people from different parts of the world, what if we saw different beings from different parts of the universe? It's possible, and also the exchange, the trade, What if we're given technology? What if we're gifted information and technology that can help us evolve, tools, information that can, things that our minds can't even fathom right now. And another really interesting thing is that the Roswell incident happened during 1947, which was the supposedly UFO crash during a Uranus and Gemini. So lots of things here are possibilities. Open contact, space tourism becoming more and more of a reality, mining asteroids, right, for the rare minerals. Um, Technology and 5G happening, experiments happening in the moon. So NASA is going to be, all these private companies are going to push deeper and faster into our galaxy. But the one important thing that I want to say is that it's not just about where we're going and where, the access that we might have, but also who we are becoming in this process. So what if Uranus in Gemini is about this deeper understanding that we're not just citizens of countries anymore? We're citizens of a solar system. So could this be the dawn of the age of Homo galactus, of the interstellar human? It's a possibility. Moving on to just a quick review here, a lot of these things I already mentioned, the potentials of that the cycle carries, the revolution of minds, ideas, new discoveries, new inventions, our travel industry, our airplanes, evolving, upgrades, the space travel, tourism, neighboring planets, our cities changing, our transportational system changing, our communication as well with new platforms, new gadgets, new systems, and the educational system reforms. We've talked about the goodies. Let's talk about the risks. Every astrological configuration brings profound potential for growth and opportunities, but also great risk. No astrological configuration comes with just the goodies, right? We always got to think about it as a mixed bag. And that's really the beauty and the power of astrology is that by understanding, by knowing this bigger picture, we can make more conscious choices with our free will and navigate the times ahead. And one of the things that we need to be very careful of, and this is one of the reasons why I um, I showed you the charts of the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, is that there's something very sobering here of a historical pattern we need to acknowledge that the last times Uranus was in Gemini, the US was at war. There was either an internal conflict or being drawn into a global battle during World War II or fighting with the colonizers. So we need to be careful, not just statistically speaking, we need to look and learn from our past. This transit, there's no way around this. Uranus and Gemini intensifies the fight for freedom, for speech, for liberation, which means it will ignite revolutions to the point where there can be emancipation movements. And this is around the world. This is not just in the US. But bringing this to the US for a minute here, the Civil War was liberation from old ways, right? Slavery and social rights. The Revolutionary War was liberation from the colonizers, having more freedom to be good things. But what happened was polarization, division, and chaos. Gemini rules siblings. Remember, siblings and neighbors. So there's the potential, the risk of fighting amongst each other and fighting with those who are our friends. But there's I think one big thread here that is something that we can all bring to our lives that's beyond just politics and global events. It's our communities, right? Our screens. Because the danger is not just external conflict, but in division between us, the building walls that separate one person from another because of whatever the reason, because of a different culture, a different language, a different skin tone, a different religion, different points of view. Uranus and Gemini wants to bridge. Gemini is the bridge builder. It sees the differences and it celebrates diversity. So the intention of Uranus and Gemini is to build bridges, but what's the risk? Losing dialogue, disconnection. Pluto in Aquarius is about social fairness as well, social movement. So you see how these two together, Pluto and Uranus, trining each other, can lead to people rising against oppressive governments, revolutions, oppressive systems. And we must be careful to not again fight our brothers and our sisters. And that remembrance that we're all in this together. And we're all one species, right? We're one, hopefully one mind that together we're much, much stronger than separated. And the other shadow side of Gemini, when we speak about war as well, I also want to remind you that war, especially now, it's not just the battlegrounds, it's not just physical war, it's digital, it's neurological. We must be careful with media that's Gemini, misinformation. We're seeing so much already, deep fakes, and hacking and warfare and digital manipulation, information overload. Like these are all very real risks. In many ways, they're invisible, right? They're invisible weapons, but disorienting, destabilizing, and can really deeply affect us. So the awareness around technology, the awareness of the intention of the use is really, really important, including the risk here of becoming, as we awaken our minds and our intelligence, it's very mental. This energy is very mental, for better and worse. So the risk is becoming a superhuman without a heart. The risk is things moving really fast, a hyper stimulated world, and we're bypassing our emotions and we're overdriving our nervous systems and ultimately losing touch with our hearts, with our empathy. So the real danger isn't just burnout and overstimulation, which are real, very real dangers, but it's also becoming the superhuman with no heart, highly efficient, but forgetting how to feel. Super stimulated and intelligent, but forgetting how to simply be in the moment, glued to a screen and forgetting the importance of connecting, hugs, touch, right? And ultimately, we know we're not meant to work like machines. We're meant to feel, we're meant to breathe, we're meant to belong, we're meant to commune with each other from a heart-centered way. So these are really, really important pieces, uh, seeds of wisdom that we need to take into consideration. Um, and also to slow down. This is also really important. We must take good care of our brains and our nervous system because as our neural brain systems are being upgraded, we're also more sensitive and vulnerable to neurological disorders, to cognitive overload, and emotional dysregulation. So, yes, it is a time for productivity, it is a time for enhancement, but also a time to constantly remember that we need to nourish our bodies. We need to take really good care of our nervous system. That brain and mind, we can't not forget this. Our brains and our minds are sacred and we need to treat them as such. So very simple tools here that I want to bring to this, which I'll show you in just a second actually, but I'll fast forward here to this slide. Um, Don't forget to rest often and breathe consciously and really take the proper time to integrate and digest your emotions. The simple things, go to nature, eat mindfully, create space for silence and stillness and meditation. Those are more and more important than ever before. So back to the charts here, I want to show you the chart of the first ingress. This is exactly on July 7th, 2025, which is something really beautiful here is happening. You see how Uranus, as it enters Gemini, that 0 degree of Gemini, it does hand in hand with Venus, which remember that Uranus has been in Taurus for 7+ years. Who's the ruler of Taurus? Venus. So it's interesting here. Maybe Venus is like saying to Uranus, like, okay, cycle completed. Here's my blessing. Let's do this hand in hand. So it's not an ordinary meeting. There's something here of a cosmic collaboration happening, and an awakening here happening. So pay attention to all the Venusian themes in your life, friendships, relationships. Maybe there's something new happening, new dynamics in love. There's such a strong social quality here. So maybe there's going to be new groups, new community. Venus is also money, right? So the financial systems. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen that first week in terms of the market, the opportunities, crypto, digital currencies. That's Venus, Uranus. What's going to happen there? And also creative expression, art, music, beauty. The other thing I want to show you, as you can see in this chart, you see that at the 0 degree of Gemini, where Uranus is starting its cycle, you see that that's where this fixed star Alcyone is at. Alcyone is the brightest light in the Pleiades star cluster. If you've never heard about the Pleiades, in Greek mythology, the Pleiades tells a story of the seven sisters. And the seven sisters, there's a deep resonance here with feminine wisdom, with star transmissions, with sacred sisterhood. So many people say that the Pleiadian star system, they work very close here as helpers and protectors and teachers for human beings, and they care so much about us and the earth. So there's something here happening that I wanted to bring up. And as Venus is activating the stars, Uranus is activating this star, what is sisterhood? And this goes beyond gender, that sisterhood, that brotherhood, those soul sisters, that star family. Could this be new people? Could this be people that are already in your life? And also Pleiadian wisdom. So pay attention to your dreams, your intuition. This is, through the arts. Maybe it's a time where you feel creative and or musical, but synchronicity. But there's something here of this portal that I think we could tune in and receive. Again, through art and sound and meditation, and friendship. So pay attention to the transmissions. I heard this thing the other day, like so many times we're listening to music and we don't realize that the words, the song lyrics, they're actually messages. And I was like, wow, I've never thought about that. So pay attention to the lyrics of the songs you're listening to. And again, Gemini rules our neighborhood, so the people nearby. Um, so Uranus says here, hey guys, look up to the sky, look up to our neighbors. And as this Pleiadian awareness is here for us, maybe this is also an opportunity to receive downloads and knowledge, from them, from this star system. And maybe it's through the heart, intuition, beauty, resonance. So I think, if you're open to that, it's it's important to know of, to be aware of this beautiful portal. And then in November, this is when Uranus moves back to Taurus. It retrogrades back to Taurus, and it's going to be in Taurus for a few more months, but this is the last pass. Next time won't be until 2102, many, many years from now. And then on April 26th, we now see Uranus in Gemini for good. It's re-entering Gemini. And look at the same configuration. So you see, Venus will be again at 2 degrees Gemini and activating the Pleiades, the Alcyone, the fixed star. So pay attention to now and um, April when Uranus re-enters. See this whole cycle as what shifts in your relationships? What about your financial systems and values? What are the economic trends happening in the world? Is there a new creative vision happening? So see if things happening now will mature by next spring. But there's definitely a very deep resonance here. Maybe even, maybe the first time now it's the spark. And in April 2026 is the revelation or the blossoming or showing, hey, this is integrated, or this is changed, but this is still needs to change. So there's something here of love and alignment that I think is really powerful here with the influence of Alcyone and the heart of the Pleiades and that feminine wisdom. Um, and another really, really important date to be aware of, which won't be until 2032, but this is so important because this is the great meeting of Uranus and Saturn. They will both be in Gemini. So this is going to be a time where Uranus is going to be finishing up in Gemini. And this is the culmination of almost a decade of experimentation, innovation, transformation. It's about to cross into Cancer in 2032, and Saturn, who's the great tester, the builder, and the realist, will meet Uranus to really review everything that's been achieved during the cycle. So it's going to ask, does it work? Did we build something, humanity, all of us, did we build something sustainable or just exciting? Is our technology really supporting humanity, or is it just bringing more disconnection? Keep in mind that this is the first time Uranus and Saturn will meet since 1988. So, crossroads, really important time where we're going to see the cosmic test of our progress, of our AI, of our space travel, of our quantum tech, of the synthetic biology and decentralized networks. All the things that we're going to be up to these next 7 years will be tested by this meeting of Saturn Uranus. Will our smarter cities survive or falter? Will AI elevate humanity or be a threat? Will space travel become more normalized, or is it going to just be, we're going to realize it's unsustainable? Will our minds keep up with the speed of our machines and our technology? So Saturn does bring consequence, and it will either initiate some sort of a dramatic course correction, or it will solidify a new paradigm, or both. But it does ask, what have we learned? What have we mastered? And this is such an important moment because whatever survives will become the foundation for the next 30 plus years until they meet again. So really, really big deal. How to make the best out of it. I already, mentioned some of them, but be curious, expand your horizons, travel, take new courses, read new books, go beyond um, your mental framework. The weirder, the better in this case, expand your mind. It's absolutely a time for that. Explore life, get out of your comfort zone. This is also an incredible time for neuroplasticity. If you've never heard about it, please research. Neuroplasticity is about the capacity that we all have to, for our brains to change and to grow. So the majority of the way our brain works, so the neural pathways that we have now were installed when we were children. So simple, very simple thing here that our brain was shaped and was molded by the very first 7 years of our life, our parents, our schooling, our siblings, our conditionings. So in many ways, we're not conscious of many of these neural pathways, but they are running our lives. They are, they're programming. And they were acquired so long ago. So this is an incredible opportunity with Uranus and Gemini to install new hardware. So we're going to see new technologies, new ways of doing that. So, take advantage of it. And again, with the overload of information, the high-minded energy, remember, take good care of your brain, take good care of your nervous system. Don't forget to eat well. Don't forget to, some ideas are breathing and pranic exercises. Be mindful of your rhythm when you're going too fast, when you're chewing too fast, when you're on the computer for many, many hours. Consciously take a step back, slow down, move your body, go to nature. Nature is our biggest ally, meditation, silencing the brain and our mind so it can recuperate and open up to receive more. And then the very last thing, which is also really, really, really important, because it has so much to do with our brains, right? We're all more at risk of brain issues, cognitive issues. So it's so important to take really good care through nutrition, supplements. So I made a little cheat sheet here. Feel free to take a screenshot. But I do suggest that you do your own research and always, always talk to your doctor before adding anything new to your routine. But all of these here are natural, really natural tools from Mother Nature that can really help us. So, for example, dark leafy greens, good quality coffee, healthy fats. The brain loves fat. So the avocados, olive oil, fatty fish, consider a keto inspired approach. So this is when you eat, you lower your carbs, you increase protein and healthy fats, which is, so it puts you in a state of ketosis, which helps your brain to have access to fat, which is really good for us. The antioxidants for memory, for, the protection against age-related cognitive decline, super, super important. And remember that there's a complete direct connection between the gut, the bacteria that live on, our gut microbiome. It's completely connected to how our brains are operating, the mental clarity. So the healthier your gut is, the sharper and more resilient brain you'll have. So again, these energies of Uranus and Gemini and Pluto and Aquarius, and remember they're really, really connected. They highlight the mind, cognition. So we need to take really good care of our physical vessel that holds it all. So again, this is not medical advice, so please do talk to your doctor, your practitioner, and of course, as well as always, listen to your body, but this is really important, so do pay attention to that. And that's it, guys. Well, first of all, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. And again, here's my information if you want to know a little bit more about me and my work and my offerings, or maybe you just want to say hello. Here's how to get in touch with me. Thank you again so much for the preciousness of your time. I really hope this information is helpful and easily integratable. Pay attention to where Uranus and Gemini is in your chart because it's going to be traveling through that place in your chart for the next 7 years. So the house it's in will give you a lot of information about where these themes and energies are going to what they're going to be activating, where they're going to be, how it's going to be playing out. So thank you so much again, and I will see you next time.